Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we are going to discuss Keshavananda Bharati case of 1973. It is very important case in the Indian constitutional history. And let us discuss what is the relevance of this particular case. Why this case is considered to be a landmark verdict in the Indian constitution, in the Indian constitutional history especially. You understand, in the Indian constitution, we have two important parts, that is part 3 and part 4. Part 3 is about fundamental rights. Part 4 is about directive principles of state policy. And fundamental rights actually talk about the basic rights for the individual, because individual is very weaker party in the front of state. State is very strong in front of the with respect to the individual. Definitely individual need to be protected from the arbitrary and excessive power of the state. For that reason, fundamental rights are given importance. It means if your fundamental rights are encroached, you can directly approach the Supreme Court or High Court without taking any recourse to the subordinate judiciary. And directive principles of state policy, these are the instructions given by the Constitution to the state in order to implement the socio-economic reforms in the country. So it means the living standards of the people must be upheld. But you understand, the constitutional makers did not understand or anticipate the potential contrast between or potential conflict between articles mentioned under the fundamental rights and articles mentioned under the direct principles of state policy. For example, article 31, which talks about the right to property. Right to property means an individual will be having the right to hold the property, and if the state has to take over the property of individual, it has to pay the compensation at the market value. So simply understand, Article 31 became a hurdle in front of the government to implement the socio-economic reforms or land reforms in the country. And special Article 39 and Article 38 talk about the socio-economic equity or progress that must be made in the country. Like, there must not be any concentration of the wealth, and the material resources must be distributed equitably in India, and workers must be given ownership over the company. In this way, a broader reform agenda is mentioned under the directive principles of state policy. Certainly these two provisions will always be in the loggerheads or conflict. And the government of India has realized, yes, there is a conflict, because Article 31 will never allow the government to implement the land reforms. So for that reason, it has amended the constitution for the first time under the first constitutional amendment. Okay. And it has amended Article 31 of the Constitution and making sure there should be some exemptions to the right to property. It means state, if it wants to take over the property of an individual in order to implement the direct principles of state policy, it will be justified. In that way, the Article 31 was amended. This was questioned by Shankari Prasad. Shankari Prasad was the landlord in the Bihar state. He has approached the Supreme Court stating that Article 31 has a clause called Article 13 especially, which gives the judicial review power to the Supreme Court. It has a particular clause called Article 13 clause 2. This clause 2 mentions many instruments of the executive or instruments of the state which are defined as the law. Law includes orders, regulations, ordinary law, okay, rules. In this way, it has a list of the things which come under the definition of the law. What the law means, it is mentioned under Article 13 clause 2. It means whenever you define the law, if any law which takes away the fundamental rights, those can be nullified by the Supreme Court. But unfortunately, Article 13 clause 2 does not mention the constitutional law. The constitutional law or constitutional amendment is not mentioned under Article 13. Then Shankari Prasad argued that Article 13 clause 2 must also be interpreted that even the constitutional amendment law or constitutional amendment act must be treated as an ordinary law. This argument was opposed by the Supreme Court in this particular case. And similarly, the same stand was reflected in the Sajjan Singh case also. But in the Golaknath case, the Supreme Court has very reformative, very progressive, stating that Article 13, Class 2, even it does not mention explicitly about the constitutional law, still we should consider Article 13, Class 2 also mentions the constitutional amendment or constitutional law. It means the constitutional amendment must also be treated as an ordinary law under Article 13, Class 2. Even it does not mention so. And moreover, it went a step ahead in stating that the fundamental rights are very sacrosanct. These cannot be touched by any constitutional amendment. It means the constitution, it means the legislature, that is parliament, under Article 368 does not have any power to touch the fundamental rights. So this was a very, reformative, very revolutionary stand that was displayed by the Golaknath case, by the Supreme Court in the Golaknath case. Then there was a question. This was the most critical question it dealt with, that is a Keshavananda Bharati case. Especially it has to deal with whether the parliament has the amendability power or amending power over the constitution or not. Whether parliament, does it hold any power to amend the constitution, and whether if it is having such amending power, whether will there be any boundary for those powers, whether those powers were fettered or unfettered, and thirdly, whether the courts can review such judgments or not. These are the fundamental questions to be dealt by the Supreme Court in the Keshavananda Bharati case. So, and moreover, Keshavananda Bharati was also a landlord hailing from Kerala. Okay, he challenged the Kerala Land Reforms Act. And of course, at the meantime, when the case was listed in the Supreme Court, another three amendments have taken place. Firstly, the parliament tried to nullify the judgment that has emerged out from the Golaknath case, because Golaknath case clearly drawn a line stating that the parliament here onwards does not have any power to amend the fundamental rights. So that's the reason why the parliament has responded to that situation by enacting 24th Amendment Act. What is that? 24th Constitutional Amendment Act. So what does it say? It means the constitutional amendments were not law under the Article 13, because earlier, Golaknath case has clearly stated Article 13 Class 2 covers the law, covers the constitutional amendment also under the purview of the law. So if it comes under the purview of the law, definitely judiciary gets the power to review whatever the enactments, whatever the amendments the parliament makes. So it means the parliament wanted to exempt the constitutional amendment from the purview of the law, thereby from the purview of the judicial review. This is the first scenario by the 24th Constitutional Amendment. And thereafter, there was 25th Constitutional Amendment, which was enacted in the year 1971, which has given two articles, that is 39 Class B and 39 Class C, which have given the precedence over the fundamental rights. It means if you want to implement Article 39 Class B and 39 Class C, then what will happen? The fundamental rights, if they are violated, definitely the fundamental rights cannot be enforced. Only the directive principles of state policy must be given a precedence over the fundamental rights. It means the courts have no jurisdiction to question the fundamental rights are violated, then the constitutional amendment will be nullified. This scenario will never emerge out of because of the 24th Constitutional Amendment. It means by means of 25th Constitutional Amendment, the fundamental rights are subsumed under the directive principles of state policy. Okay. And moreover, this 25th Constitutional Amendment also has taken away the power of the court to decide whether a law was actually passed to further the policy laid down in these articles. It means, for example, the court has no power to test whether the objective under Article 39 and Article 39C was realized because of the enactment of a particular legislation. For example, if any legislation has been enacted to give an effect to Article 39B and Article 39C by distribution of land resources, whether that particular policy fulfilled or not, this kind of test cannot also be done by the judiciary. It means the judiciary will be completely done away with the judicial review power because of 25th Constitutional Amendment as far as the Land Acts are concerned. And next important enactment was 29th Constitutional Amendment, which has added 2 land reform statutes to the 9th schedule of the Constitution. When you have added this 9th schedule, any statute into the 9th schedule, what will happen? The courts will also be deprived of the powers to review those legislations. These legislations will be completely insulated from the judicial review. But you understand, 9th schedule actually meant to create a kind of exemption for the land legislations from the judicial review. But unfortunately, the 9th schedule became very much misused by including those legislations which have no connection with the land reforms. So this was a dangerous consequences that has emerged out of this particular 9th schedule. And coming to what was the argument that was leveled by the Keshavananda Bharati in this particular case? Keshavananda Bharati had challenged the amendments to nullify some of the most cardinal principles of our constitution, and the parliament could not draw authority from the constitution to alter those very principles. It means, for example, what the parliament was doing, parliament was simply enacting some constitutional amendments and legislations in order to violate the fundamental rights. It means the parliament is taking Article 368 as its source of its powers to amend the constitution. What it is doing, it is simply violating Part 3 of the constitution. So you are using the hand of the parliament or finger of the parliament to blind the parliament itself by violating articles mentioned under the fundamental rights or Part 3 of the constitution. So this was the argument of the Keshavananda Bharati. And coming to the argument of the government, what it was arguing means there was no limit to the parliament to amend the constitution. It means the constitution can be amended in any way the parliament likes. So this was the argument of the government. There will be no fetters, no boundaries, or no limits for the amendability of the constitution by the parliament. Then what was the question in front of Supreme Court? Then it was relevant for the Supreme Court to examine the parliament's amending power to ascertain the constitutional validity of those amendments. It means whether the parliament is having to unlimitedly amend the constitution and whether the Supreme Court can reverse those amendments or not. So this was the question in front of the Supreme Court. And let us understand what is a majority judgment in this particular case. Because a kind of deadlock was created in the Golaknath case. In the Golaknath case, Supreme Court has clearly declared that here onwards, the parliament does not have any power to touch the fundamental rights. But it was very, very dangerous situation because many political scholars have criticized the Golaknath verdict because it did not consider the practicality of its judgment. Because the constitution cannot be a deadwood or a kind of a rigid document. It must be a living organism. It must be changed according to the circumstances of the country. So that's why this kind of deadlock was to be resolved by the Keshavananda Bharati. So for that reason, it has declared the following 5 points. First one, the 24th Constitutional Amendment was very much valid. 25th Constitutional Amendment was also valid except for the clause ousting the court's jurisdiction. It means 25th Constitutional Amendment has clearly insulated the judicial review in reviewing the amending power of the amending power of the parliament with respect to certain articles in the constitution. And the 29th amendment to the constitution was also valid. And fourth one, Golaknath judgment, which has asserted that fundamental rights could not be taken away or nullified by the parliament, was overruled. It means this particular verdict of the Golaknath case was completely overruled by the Supreme Court. And fifthly, there were no implied limitations on the parliament power to amend the constitution. It means you can't say there are limits to the amending powers of the parliament. Parliament can amend the constitution the way it likes, the way it wishes. But it has mentioned certain limits, some sort of boundaries for the amending power indirectly. In what way it is indirectly? Let us understand. For the first time, it has mentioned the basic structure doctrine. It means the parliament can amend the constitution the way it likes, but subject to certain limits like basic structure. The Supreme Court has held that the amendment does not encompass or defacing constitution such that it lost its identity. It means you can't completely deface, you can't completely restructure the constitution, but you must comply yourselves to the basic requirements of the constitution, and you must be respecting the basic structure of the constitution. In the framework of the basic structure, you can amend the constitution the way you like. Okay, so this was the landmark verdict. Why Kesavananda Bharati case is landmark verdict is it tried to balance the constitutional integrity and amending power of the parliament as far as the constitution is concerned. It means the parliament will be having amending power. At the same time, certain basic values of the constitution must be protected. It means the outcome can be discussed in a single line, stated in a single line, that parliament has no power to redraw the constitution. Parliament has no power to redraw the constitution, rewrite the constitution by the way of its amending power. Then what were the basic features declared in the constitution specially? But basic features were not completely commonly declared. Actually, this was the 13 bench Supreme Court bench. So out of which 7 benches have given the majoritarian verdict, and 6 members have given their minority or dissenting verdict. And many judges have given their individual interpretations. For the first time in the Supreme Court history, the majority judges have given the summary of their judgment. Because they were giving some a kind of similar verdict, but the contents of the verdict was very dissimilar. They were very individualistic in interpreting the constitution. For that reason, they have given a summary. The summary has given what the Supreme Court wanted to say in the Kesavananda Bharati case. So that's the reason why the basic features were mentioned individually by the individual judges, but not commonly. So Justice Sikri, who was the Supreme Court Chief Justice of that times, has given supremacy of constitution, republican character, democratic form, secular character, likewise separation of powers, etc. These cannot be violated when any constitutional amendment is enacted. And Justice Shailath and Grover also mentioned certain things: dignity of individual and unity and integrity of nation. Likewise, there were basic features. Justice Hegde also given certain basic features, and Justice Jagan Mohan Reddy also given certain basic features like sovereign and democratic character of the Indian Constitution. So in this way, the Kesavananda Bharati case is very landmark, because simply it has tried to declare the parliament has the power to amend the constitution the way it likes, but subject to certain limitations. So this is what the Kesavananda Bharati case. If you have any doubts, please mention under the comment box. Okay, thank you so much.